that particular video was about the relationship between what was the gay agenda in the late 80s and early 90s. And the document was by a man named Michael Swift, and he wrote for a publication called the Gay Community News. This document was an essay that he wrote in that publication, but there's a record of it in the congressional record. So that's where I pulled the resource. So I was very clear about where I got it from.
As we all, so you pulled the letter from the congressional records?
From the congressional record, written for the Gay Community News by Michael Swift.
So that's the actual letter that you wrote from the congressional records. So wasn't there like something you said about a sentence that was taken out, or that?
Yeah. So what it said was whoever posted that, it was, I could tell it was biased, because they interjected that this letter was used for right-wing propaganda against, you know, gays. But either way, I felt like whatever was omitted really doesn't negate the fact that this letter was written by an author for the Gay Community News. This was the philosophy that he was presenting at the time. And so what I'm trying to do with that video was, I wasn't trying to say, okay, this is this sick letter that somebody wrote, so let's project that onto all gay people. That's not what I was trying to do. What I was trying to do was say, okay, that 87, here we are in 2020. Let's look back on how the gay community has impacted education, entertainment, the family unit, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I used that letter as kind of a checklist to see how much was on that letter has happened in real life. You know what I mean? And so that's what I was doing, is I wasn't saying, okay, let me tell you what his motivation is. I'm saying, let's look at the results of what has happened in entertainment the last 20 years, and then let's try to deduce what the motivation is. Perhaps this letter represents the mindset of the gay community, or members of the gay community, or members of the media in the gay community. And if you look at what I'm saying, if you look at what GLAAD is and what GLAAD does, in my mind, it supports it.
So yeah, no, it does. It does. I remember you were reading some stuff and you're like, la, 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 what the fuck? Like, la, la, what the fuck? But it's true. You're like, wait a minute. And you know, it's so funny, Jim, because I have a lot of gay friends too. And I remember hearing people say, oh, there's a gay agenda. And I would be upset. I would be offended. I'd be like, there's not.
Me too. Me too.
Like, what are you talking about? Like,
me too.
Or gay people are just that way. Like, I would just be like, I remember I had a friend that was telling me that she thought gay people were gay because they were like molested and raped. And I was like, come on, man, they're just that way because that's who they are.
They're born that way, baby.
Yeah.
Born this way.
Yeah. Like, but at the time, just me being protective of my, my friends, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, but as I've gotten older, I would say, maybe there are a couple of my friends that I haven't talked to. I would say 90% of my friends that are gay have been molested.
Oh yeah, me too. Me too. And I have no problem telling you that, you know, I am bisexual, but at this point in my life, I'm starting to question, would I find an attraction to women if I had not been molested by another girl when I was 5 years old? And I think, and I told you on the phone, I think that if the gay community could just come clean about that one fucking thing, instead of trying to convince the world that they're born that way, let's just examine one thing. Let's just look at your environment and how you grew up, okay? Please, that's all I'm saying. I'm not asking them to deny that they were born that way. I'm just saying, is it possible that some were created through their environment or through a traumatic experience, okay? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And you have a what? I didn't mean to.
I even have a video, like I said, in part of my pedophilia series, where I use someone else's podcast. Her name is Six the Goddess. Shout out Six the Goddess. And she talks about how the imprinting of hypersexuality can happen to a child when they are molested under a certain age because their brain hasn't developed. We all know that. Any psychologist can tell you that. Any child development major in college can tell you that. But for whatever reason, the gay community won't accept responsibility for it and won't even acknowledge it. And all I'm proposing is the idea, is it possible that some people are gay because they were sexualized by the same sex at a young age and their brain shifted? Is it possible? That's all I'm saying.
You know, and it's funny because if anybody, on a side note, if anybody's listening to this, if you can send me, I'm looking for information on the chakras and how if you mess with the lower chakra, the sex chakra, too at a younger age, if anybody's done a research on that and on a spiritual level, if that can mess with your sexuality, I'm interested in that. But yeah, but I also am also beginning to, you know, think about the chemical. It could, if homosexuality can be induced via chemicals, your hormones, you know, you do have incidences of gay animals in the environment, you know, and then they molest and rape and stuff too, just like we do. You know, I'm just like, I know I'm kind of taking it all far, but I know that there's going to be that devil's advocate. Well, there's, you know, there's gay animals in the environment, but then there's a study that was showing that, you know, Tyrone Hayes, you know, that guy that he worked for Syngenta. He's a black scientist. And it's funny how Neil deGrasse Tyson gets more play than this dude, but I think this guy's interesting too. He basically was a frog biologist and he worked for Syngenta and he was doing research on, he's a biologist, but his emphasis was on frogs and he was studying these frogs. And the herbicide, I forgot the name of the herbicide, but it was created by Syngenta. And the herbicide that they were using, the runoff would go into the stream, the nearby stream. And he got these frogs, and first the frogs were like, they were heterosexual, but the more they were exposed to this chemical, they became homosexual.
Fluoride.
No, it's not fluoride. It's I mean, fluoride could be, I don't know, but I forgot the name of the chemical. And he was a black scientist, and he worked at Berkeley. And he started, he actually was in the New Yorker before like this election and stuff. This, you know, before it was really, the lines are really drawn. But he started dressing like with plaids, like, you know, what do you call these, blazers, and he started cornrolling his hair because he wanted to stick out, because as he was speaking out about this, he was getting like death threats. They tried to like ruin his career. I have to send it to you. I'll send it to you. I'll put that in the links too. Wait, I'm gonna write it. Tyrone. Anyway, so, and then there's another studies that was done on storks, and I forgot what chemical was introduced in the environment, but the bird started to act homosexual. But if you think about it, when people get sex change, they're given certain hormones to make them more of the other sex. So why couldn't that be induced?
Well, I mean,
if you're a man
to some
getting
degree,
a sex change, you're given chemicals to grow your breasts to make you more feminine, and vice versa. If you're a woman getting a sex change, you're given chemicals to make, or hormones to make your hair grow facially. So all of the BPA stuff, all the chemicals, all the stuff in our environment, the soy, you know, if people are drinking these phytoestrogens, these xenoestrogens, and that could be another way to mess with their sexuality, to confuse people. And you also have—
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
With the aborted fetal tissues, right? Some of the cells are MRC5 or male, and the WI38 are female. But what if you're injecting females into a vaccine that was grown on female aborted fetal tissue into a pregnant woman, or a woman that's going to get pregnant? Could that have any impact on their sexuality? You know? And I think there's some gay people that will like this information, because I know a lot of gay people that struggle with why they are the way they are, and they make it seem like it's, you know, it's a happy thing, right? It's funny, right? You also think of like the programming, gay, you know, technically it was happy, it meant happy, but there's so much sadness in the gay community that nobody
I know.
want to talk about. There's a lot of drug use, there's a lot of homelessness, there's a lot of abusive relationships.
Oh yeah.
It's not like a ride in the park. And now as I get older, you know, a lot of my gay friends are lamenting the fact that they can't procreate with the people that they love. and have children, because even though they're gay, they're still human, and they want their bloodlines to live on, and they want to have kids, and nobody chooses really to be that way.
Yeah.
So,
Well, yeah, tell me about it. I live in San Francisco. I know. I mean, I think a lot of that is where a lot of this insecurity comes from, is that deep sadness, that deep confusion, you know, and I don't think that companies like GLAAD need to insert themselves like they're the fucking answer for anyone who's confused. Do you know, you see what I'm saying?
but
I wish there was a better support system for gay people that was more holistic. Like you said, is there some diet? Is there some poisoning? Is there some hormonal issues? But then also it's like your childhood, your environment, you know, were you exposed to pornography when you were a child? Were you molested by another child? Did something happen between you and your older brother? You know what I mean? I mean, these are so many questions to ask, and I wish there could be a middle ground somewhere where someone, maybe we need to do this, is create some sort of facility where people can just figure it out. And it's like no judgment either way. If you're on the down low, great, let's figure that out and stop lying to your wife. But you know what? If you're, you know what I mean? If you really are straight and you just experimented because your coach molested you and you never learned appropriate boundaries, let's address that as well. Maybe you really are straight, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, no, but it's like, it's like, you know, what was I gonna say? I watched the Democratic Party, and they run the same game on gay people as they do on Black people. And they don't want people to be secure, because when somebody's insecure, they're so much easier to control. They're so much more susceptible to mind games and manipulation.
Absolutely.
And it's like, you probably know this too. Like, you know, they have this whole like persona that a gay person has to fit. If you're a guy, you have to go clubbing every weekend. You have to wear pastels. You have to wear rainbow shit. You know,
you have to do ecstasy.
You have to do ecstasy. You have to do meth. You know, you know, all this stuff. And I've literally had friends that were gay, but they were like, I like soccer. And they've been approached by other gay friends, and they're like, you're not gay enough. Just like Black people are approached by other Black people, like, you're not Black enough. You know, you have to talk with a lisp if you're a guy, and if you're a girl, you have to be butch. You have to have short hair. You have to like not shave your legs. You have to, you know, and of course there are exceptions to this, but just like, you know, being Black, you know, you have to talk a certain way. You have to like hip hop. You have to have a certain persona and fit into this box that they have perfectly manufactured for you. And if you don't fit into that box, then you can't call yourself what you are. You know, they have the rules. They can christen you what they feel, but it's the same shit that's being run in the gay community. And I feel like a lot of gay people capitulate to it, even though they don't even really want to, but because they've lost their families, they have to have a community, you know. And I think a lot of the SJW rage, just to be fair, comes from a lot of very harsh religious people who have judged them and kicked them out of their families. You know, I know a lot of gay people that have, like, you know, their families have disowned them. They, you know, or they were beat up and constantly abused, you know, in their town, you know. So I understand that. So now that's why, you know, it's like this whole elitist thing, right? Like, this is.
But you know what?